Hi.
Hola, ¿cómo está? We're not going to do this in Spanish, I promise. That's really the only Spanish I know. So, today our video is about editors.
What they do.
And why do you need one?
It's funny how much confusion there is about what an editor does because it's a word we all know. It's not some industry term per se or what have you. But we see so much confusion.
Over and over.
So when you are hiring an editor to work on your book as opposed to having an editor at a publishing house who has bought your book, let us just define a couple terms to help you out here.
Yeah.
So there are line edits and there are developmental edits.
Right. So a developmental edit usually happens first. It's when the editor reads your book and they talk about the big picture ideas, whether the plot is working, whether the beginning works, the end works, whether the middle lags, which is often the case.
The character, the voice, the
arcs.
marketability of the book.
Yes.
And also, this is not looking at the sentence level.
No.
As David said, big picture.
Because there's no point in looking at this sentence when this sentence might be gone because it goes on a tangent that doesn't support the book.
And when you're working on nonfiction, it's very much about structure.
Right.
And, you know, for any book, really, where you should start, where you should end, all of that kind of stuff.
And particularly in nonfiction, though, usually you're building some kind of argument or answering some kind of question.
Exactly.
And so you want an editor, in that kind of book, will want to make sure that does this part of the book support your argument? Is it moving it forward? When you're doing a piece of fiction, each part of the book has to move the plot forward and hopefully illuminate character at the same time. If it's not doing that, no matter how beautiful it is, got to go. We call that killing your babies.
So a line edit is on the sentence level.
Right.
And typically we don't recommend a line edit unless, for example, you're self-publishing and you're about to publish your book and you want to make sure everything is clean and great and every sentence is as good as it can be. And this is different than a copy edit.
Right.
A copy edit is for grammar, for continuity, making sure that all your parentheses and commas are in the right place.
At the beginning of the chapter, the person was in a black hat. At the end, they're in a red hat. How could that be? That's what a good copy editor will do for you. We had a copy editor. We had The Essential Guide to Getting Your Book Published. Our book copy edited 3 different times. And this copy editor changed our book. She was unbelievably brilliant.
Yeah. So, which kind of edit do you need? Typically, as we said, you will need a developmental edit. And that is often accompanied by an editorial letter, which talks about all of these different issues and allows you to go back into your book and figure out how to make it as tight as possible. Yeah.
I want to just talk about how to work with your editor, because you don't want to just take everything they say, especially if you disagree with it. Arielle had a client who the editor said, oh, it needs to be this kind of book. And the writer didn't really want to do that. But she's like, oh, okay, well, the editor said it, so therefore I have to do it, and finished all these edits. And the editor said, oh, this is not good. And the writer knew this from the get-go and shouldn't have done that.
That was at a publishing house.
At a publishing house.
Yeah.
It's really important that you have a dialogue with your editor. If you disagree with something, ask why. If you think this part of the book absolutely belongs there and the editor says it doesn't, ask them why. Part of what we do also is have a conversation with when we edit a
Now,
book.
at the same time, you also don't want to have a defensive reaction.
Belligerence. No.
So it's very common when you first get a letter or an edit back to feel that the editor had no understanding of what your book actually was, and that you paid all this money for nothing. So you need to take a moment, digest, etc., before deciding what does make sense and what doesn't.
I didn't say curse at your editor and yell at them. I said ask questions, thoughtful questions.
So the last thing is, do you need an editor? Right. And the answer is universally yes. Whether you pay someone is a completely different question. But whether you self-edit, whether you have friends or colleagues edit, whether you hire an editor or whether you have an editor at a publishing house, an editor is that essential outside eye that one cannot have on your own to help you get the best book possible out into the world. Thanks, people.